All right, let's remove this guy and see what else we have. Textures, brushed mesh. And now I use the radial brush. Also interesting, right? Because it's not a round thing, but I think you will like what we can achieve with it. So I'll reduce the scale quite a bit. Or maybe we start still quite high. Then angular noise. So that's basically, if I go like this, and you see angular noise. So this is what it does. Basically, there's more transition between those things. The lines are not as clean cut. And then we can still have the distortion noise, where you can also go wild, right? Let's give it this. And then you can reduce the scale to really push it. I don't want to go too wild, but just have it a little bit different from the usual. And then if we go back, right. I think this looks better. We get these waves that look really cool. And yeah, remember this is radial brushed, right? But we get these really cool waves, and on top we would have our cylindrical brushes that go in circles, but for us they have these interesting appearance. Right. So this gives me desert vibes or whatever. And let's say if we reduce the dimension even further, make it smaller, we keep the noise of the angular noise, but we remove the noise of the distortion. And then to me, it does feel a lot like plywood. And the cool thing is that you have these irregularities, the natural inhomogeneities that the wood would have, right? They're not, every line is perfect. They have different shades, slightly different thicknesses, some variation within the strain. So I think this is a nice way to create a plywood effect. And there we have this really dominant line in the middle. You can always just go low and then it's less prominent and see what happens, right? Until you find something where you are like happy with. I do think that this would look really convincing. Maybe we can change this material to, even if it's just plastic, but give it a color that is woody. Yes, there we are. And then you immediately see that this does come pretty close to a plywood texture, right? Let's move on. What do we have next? Okay, let's copy this one. Duplicate. But this one leaves, and we have camouflage. Also cool one. Right, we can just leave the colors because it doesn't matter. It just takes the value for the opacity map anyways, the black and white values. So for us, it's not of that much interest. Let's remove that back to metal again and make it gold. So we stay in line with the aesthetic of our previous examples. But maybe that's also not as smart. Let's see. I will test it. Otherwise, we can always change back, right? Okay, so we have the scale, right? How big should the patterns be? We keep it at 50. Now we have the color balance at 1. Then distortion, again, it goes all the way up there. It's basically unlimited. Where you see this little checkered box next to it, you can have a really high range for the scale, or you can even apply an image as a density field. Yeah, that's the word, right? So I use this one again, like high distortion, 15. The camouflage is already more or less lost. And we make it a little bit smaller still. 0.5 maybe. And then you can still play with the spray or not. So what spray does is basically also fade the different fields of the camouflage into each other. And then you get more soft transitions or no grain. And then you get what we have here. I do think it's cool that the bump interacts with the material. So we have these indentations where the black color would be. But maybe let's do plastic indeed for this one. And now you see that it looks much more like a speckled item. Or could also be terrazzo, right? These stones. Yeah, so maybe you want to have it smaller and create your own terrazzo style, whatever, your own colors, everything. Everything's possible. And another one would be, so if we go back to the scale, that was also a strange one, if you ask me. I don't know exactly why it looks like this, but it did so anyway in my last test at least. 0.03. Yeah, and we get the same effect. I really can't explain to you why now we have, let's say, an accumulation of the black spots of the camouflage and of the bright spots on the other side, and then you have really not a homogeneous distribution of the different colors, which leads to, I think, a really cool appearance, because this is now a point of interest where you get your attention is being pushed over the surface of the volume differently because there's different focus points. Maybe you notice first the accumulation of the black dots, and then there's a highlight. No, it's not a highlight, actually it's speckles in a different color, right? So I think this is a really cool one, and it can also mimic like some natural materials, I would say. Overall, I quite like the appearance of this guy. Okay, so there's two more materials that I want to show you, and then we're almost there.